Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the chilling story of a woman's fight for survival against a murderous husband. Stay tuned as we dive into a case that shocked the nation. Eliza and Carter Mathis appeared to have the kind of life most people envied. They lived in a charming colonial-style house nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood in upstate New York. Their lives seemed perfectly aligned. Eliza's thriving career as a real estate agent brought financial stability, while Carter's work as a contractor added an element of practicality to their union. They were often seen hosting cheerful backyard barbecues, walking their golden retriever through the neighborhood, or sharing laughter during community events. To those on the outside, they were the epitome of a happy, successful couple. Yet behind the picturesque facade, their relationship was quietly unraveling. Eliza had begun to notice subtle but unsettling changes in Carter's behavior over the past few months. The man who once greeted her with warm smiles and shared nightly conversations over dinner was now cold and distant. He spent long hours away from home, claiming work as the reason, though the excuses often felt vague and unconvincing. When he was home, his demeanor was irritable, and the smallest things seemed to provoke his temper. Eliza confided her worries to close friends, expressing her unease about the growing emotional gap between them. They reassured her, attributing Carter's behavior to stress or exhaustion from work. But the intuitive nagging in the back of Eliza's mind refused to be silenced. She started to feel as though she was living with a stranger, a man whose actions and presence became increasingly unpredictable. Carter, on the other hand, was battling demons Eliza couldn't see. Unbeknownst to her, he had plunged headlong into a financial crisis, losing their life savings in high-stakes gambling. The mounting debt was an anvil hanging over his head, and he grew desperate to find a way out. The fear of his wife discovering the truth added to his mounting pressure. He began to see her not as his partner but as an obstacle to the quick fix he so desperately sought. As Carter's desperation deepened, so did the darkness within him. He started to contemplate the unthinkable, entertaining thoughts he would never have imagined before. Each time he looked at Eliza, it wasn't love or guilt. He felt it was an icy detachment. A plan began to form in his mind, one that he believed would solve all his problems in one fell swoop. He told himself it was the only way out, convincing himself that it was her or him, and there was no other option. Eliza, still unaware of the storm brewing within her husband, continued to go about her daily life, trying to mend the cracks in their relationship. Little did she know, Carter's mind was already made up, and the idyllic life they had built was about to shatter irreparably. One cold October morning, the kind that hinted at the approaching winter, Eliza Mathis vanished without a trace. It began as an ordinary day. Her schedule was packed with client meetings, and her cheerful demeanor suggested nothing unusual. Yet, when her car was discovered abandoned in a parking lot near a popular hiking trail hours later, alarm bells rang. The vehicle showed no signs of struggle or damage, but Eliza's phone and purse were inside, untouched. This discovery sent a wave of panic through her family and friends, who immediately reported her missing. A search effort was launched, involving local law enforcement, volunteers, and even tracking dogs. Flyers bearing Eliza's smiling face were plastered across the town, and the community rallied to aid in the search. Despite their determination, days turned into weeks without any leads. The lack of progress fueled countless rumors, from theories of abduction to speculation that Eliza had intentionally disappeared. Throughout the ordeal, Carter Mathis took center stage as the grieving husband. He appeared on local news stations, tearfully pleading for anyone with information to come forward. His sorrow seemed genuine, his pain palpable, and he quickly became a sympathetic figure in the eyes of the public. Neighbors dropped off food and offered their support, while his coworkers expressed disbelief that such a tragedy could strike their friend. But as time wore on, cracks began to appear in Carter's narrative. His account of the morning Eliza disappeared was vague and inconsistent. Initially, he claimed to have been running errands, yet surveillance footage from multiple locations failed to confirm his presence. Furthermore, his demeanor shifted behind closed doors. To those close to him, his grief seemed rehearsed, almost too perfect. Detectives assigned to the case grew increasingly suspicious. While they continued to follow leads, they also began quietly scrutinizing Carter's actions. A deeper investigation into his finances revealed a startling discovery: Carter was drowning in debt, much of it accrued through gambling. Just weeks before Eliza's disappearance, he had taken out a sizable life insurance policy on her, raising more red flags. Despite their growing suspicions, law enforcement lacked concrete evidence to tie Carter to the case. His cooperative and seemingly devastated persona made it difficult to build a case against him without something more definitive. As investigators worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle, the community remained on edge, gripped by the mystery of what had happened to Eliza. In the meantime, Carter maintained his public facade of heartbreak. Behind closed doors, however, he watched the investigation closely, knowing that any misstep could bring the truth crashing down. He thought he had planned everything perfectly, but the threads of his deception were beginning to fray, and it was only a matter of time before they unraveled completely. Weeks after Eliza's disappearance, the search seemed to have reached a dead end. The community's initial fervor waned, leaving her family clinging to fading hope. Then, in an extraordinary twist, a hiker made a chilling discovery deep within the dense woods miles away from the nearest trail. The hiker stumbled upon what appeared to be a hastily dug grave, partially obscured by fallen leaves. The ground looked disturbed, and something protruding from the dirt caught their eye. The authorities were called immediately, and what they found left even the most seasoned investigators in shock. Inside the shallow grave was a woman's body, bound tightly with rope, bruised and barely clinging to life. It was Eliza. Against all odds, she was alive, her breath faint but steady. She was rushed to the hospital, her survival nothing short of a miracle. As doctors worked to stabilize her, the details of her harrowing ordeal began to emerge. Eliza's account painted a horrifying picture. On the morning of her disappearance, Carter had lured her into their home under the guise of an urgent conversation. Without warning, he attacked her, striking her hard enough to render her nearly unconscious. Before she could fully comprehend what was happening, he had drugged her, bound her hands and feet, and loaded her into the trunk of his car. Carter drove deep into the woods, far from any prying eyes. He had chosen the location carefully, believing it was remote enough to keep his crime hidden forever. As he dug her grave, Eliza drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of her impending fate but too weak to fight back. Carter believed she was already lifeless when he placed her in the ground, covering her with dirt and leaving her for dead. What Carter hadn't anticipated was Eliza's extraordinary will to survive. Gasping for air in the confined space, she managed to regain enough strength to claw her way through the dirt. The process was agonizingly slow, her body screaming in protest, but she refused to give up. Hours later, she emerged, battered and weak but alive, and stumbled through the woods until collapsing in exhaustion. Her discovery reignited the investigation, this time with Carter as the prime suspect. Forensic evidence from the scene corroborated Eliza's account, and the ropes used to bind her matched materials found in Carter's workshop. The shallow grave, hastily dug, became a critical piece of evidence, telling a story of desperation and cruelty. Eliza's survival was nothing short of miraculous, but the road to justice had only just begun. As her story made headlines, the world watched in stunned disbelief as the once-admired husband was revealed to be a cold and calculating monster. The trial of Carter Mathis quickly became the focal point of national attention, drawing crowds of onlookers, media crews, and legal experts eager to witness the unfolding of such an extraordinary case. The story of Eliza's survival had already captured public fascination, but the trial promised to reveal even more of the chilling details behind Carter's attempt to murder his wife. Eliza's testimony was the most anticipated moment. Despite the emotional and physical scars left by her ordeal, she appeared composed and determined as she recounted the events in precise detail. The courtroom was silent as she described the morning of the attack, the overwhelming fear she felt as Carter overpowered her, and the unimaginable horror of waking up in a shallow grave. Her voice trembled at times, but her resolve never wavered. The vividness of her account left jurors visibly shaken, and even the most seasoned legal professionals couldn't hide their shock. Prosecutors laid out an overwhelming case against Carter, presenting evidence that painted him as a man driven by greed and desperation. They revealed his crippling gambling debts and the life insurance policy he had recently taken out on Eliza. The timeline of events, supported by forensic evidence, solidified their argument. Mud found on Carter's boots matched the soil from the burial site, and rope fibers at the scene were identical to those found in his workshop. His internet search history, detailing methods of disposing of a body, became a damning piece of evidence. The defense attempted to shift the narrative, arguing that Carter's actions were impulsive rather than premeditated. They claimed he had been overwhelmed by financial pressures and had acted in a moment of uncontrollable rage. They painted a picture of a man who regretted his actions, appealing to the jury's sense of empathy. However, this strategy faltered in the face of Eliza's powerful testimony and the evidence that pointed to careful planning on Carter's part. The jury's deliberation was swift, taking only a few hours to reach a unanimous verdict. Carter Mathis was found guilty of attempted murder, kidnapping, and several other charges. The judge, citing the cruel and calculated nature of the crime, sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the verdict was read, Eliza sat quietly, her expression a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Justice had been served, but the emotional toll of the trial was evident. For Carter, the once respected husband and community member, his fate was sealed. He left the courtroom in shackles, a stark contrast to the confident, composed man he had once appeared to be. The trial ended, but its impact resonated far beyond the courtroom. The public saw Carter as the embodiment of betrayal and cruelty, while Eliza emerged as a symbol of strength and resilience. Her courage not only secured her own justice but inspired countless others to fight for theirs. In the months following the trial, Eliza Mathis began the long process of rebuilding her life. The ordeal had left her physically and emotionally scarred, but her determination to move forward never wavered. She sold the home she once shared with Carter, unable to bear the memories tied to its walls, and relocated to a new town where she could start fresh. Eliza's survival story became a beacon of hope for many. Invitations poured in from talk shows, podcasts, and advocacy groups eager to hear her story. She approached these opportunities with a sense of purpose, using her platform to raise awareness about domestic violence and hidden dangers that often go unnoticed. Eliza's resilience and willingness to share her journey resonated with audiences, turning her into an unexpected symbol of strength. To further her mission, Eliza established a foundation dedicated to supporting survivors of domestic violence and educating communities about the warning signs of abusive relationships. The foundation's work included offering resources to those in need, funding shelters, and providing legal assistance for victims. Eliza found solace and purpose in helping others, channeling her pain into a cause that could save lives. Meanwhile, Carter's life behind bars was a far cry from the one he had once known. His reputation was shattered, his name synonymous with betrayal and cruelty. In prison, he was isolated and ostracized, his crime drawing condemnation even from other inmates. For Carter, every day was a reminder of the life he had thrown away and the destruction he had caused. Though justice had been served, Eliza grappled with the lingering effects of her trauma. Nights were the hardest, as nightmares of her time in the grave often jolted her awake. Therapy became a crucial part of her healing process, helping her navigate the complex emotions of fear, anger, and betrayal. Slowly, she began to reclaim her sense of safety and self-worth. Eliza's story also left a lasting impact on the community she left behind. Neighbors who once saw Carter and Eliza as the perfect couple were forced to confront the reality that appearances could be deceiving. Conversations about domestic violence and its often hidden nature became more prevalent, sparking changes in local policies and support systems for victims. Years later, Eliza stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony of a new shelter funded by her foundation. The building was named Eliza's Haven, a tribute to her courage and determination. As she addressed the crowd, her voice carried the strength of someone who had faced unimaginable darkness and emerged into the light. While the scars of her ordeal would always remain, they were now a testament to her resilience, a reminder that even in the face of unthinkable cruelty, survival and hope were possible.